StrayAllDay.com.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves anyone, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is today we're going to talk about the gaps that nobody else talks about, that maybe some of you are familiar with, but again, nobody's talking about them. So I guess I got to appoint myself to talk about these, and this is going to take 2 episodes because there's so many of them that nobody talks about, that I guess I got to set the world straight and make sure everybody is aware of these. So before we even get into that, let me remind everybody of 2 things. Number 1, send out a text every day guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point, called Daily Motivation. Text me at my number 305-384-6894. You'll be part of my text community. It is free to join. We'll tell you your options as soon as you get in. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is the place where I do all my coaching. It's actually the only place I do any coaching. If you would like to work with me directly, that is the only way that you can do it. There are no other options. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. We make it very simple, very easy, and very smooth for you to get to working directly with me inside the university. Again, workonyourgameuniversity.com. We have a 4-part framework based around mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability. If you like my style, you like the way I deliver, you like the way that I get straight to the point, no BS, no fluff, very direct, very real, and on top of the fact, I know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to helping you with your business, with your mindset, with your game plan, with your processes, and making sure everything and everyone is held accountable. Workonyourgameuniversity.com. All right, with all those maintenance things out of the way, let's get into the topic. Now, you have probably heard about something like, you hear people talking about the wealth gap. Everybody's heard people talk about the wealth gap, how certain groups have more wealth than other groups in aggregate. We know that there are outliers in every group. But people want to remind you that certain groups are behind in the race, or certain groups are behind because they started off further behind than other groups for whatever reason. And many of these reasons people will happily and loudly tell you about over and over again. You probably heard about those. And it's not that they don't exist. It's just that you've heard about them so much that I don't need to give time to those because you already heard about it. But there are also other gaps, such as literacy gaps, general success gaps, and other things that I'm not thinking of at the moment, that I'm sure there are people who will tell you a lot about those as well, in addition to the wealth gap, and even write entire books about these gaps. And actually, there are probably people who've done all of these things. Today, here's what I'm going to do. It's different than all of that. I'm going to talk about the gaps that are clear, they are obvious, but when you think about them, you don't hear anybody talking about them, at least not in the form of them being gaps. You hear people talk about them, period. You don't hear people talk about them as gaps. As a matter of fact, you've heard me talk about some of the things I'm going to talk about in today and tomorrow's episode. You've heard me talk about them in general as general concepts, but you haven't heard me talk about them as, wait a minute, one of the reasons why one person and another person, there's a gap between their outcomes, is because there's a gap in this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. Those things, that's what I'm going to talk about in today's episode and tomorrow's episode. So what I'm going to do is fill in the gap in the marketplace of these gaps not being discussed. You see what I did there? Point number 1. Today's topic, once again, is the gaps that nobody talks about. Number 1, discipline gap. Let me ask you a question. Is there a discipline gap in society? Any of you who's a successful professional in what you do, let me ask you a question. Are there some people who started out at the same time as you and basically at the same level as you, who are right now not at the same level as you, and you have gone significantly further than they have? If the answer is yes, let me ask you a question. Is there a gap in your discipline and their discipline? Is there a gap between your ability, not ability, but your execution of showing up consistently to do your job versus their execution of showing up consistently to do their job? Is there a gap between you and them? All of you are probably even laughing to yourself right now because you know that there is a gap. There has been a gap. There continues to be a gap. And in the future, there probably will continue to be a gap. And you know that discipline gap probably plays a role in the fact that you're where you are and some of your former peers are where they are. I mean, they may still be your peer, but it doesn't even look like it anymore based on where you're at versus where they're at. Can we agree to this? You hear me mention every day when I open up this show, showing up every single day to do the work, right? That's the first thing I mention when we talk about the work on your game philosophy. Why? Because discipline is the most important aspect of everything work on your game is about. I don't care if you're an athlete, entrepreneur, anywhere in between. How many people do you know, I'm talking to everyone now, who wants to be successful, yet they don't have the ability to show up every day and just do the damn work that is a foundational requirement of success? How many people do you know who just don't show up? They for whatever reason, they're just not showing up, but they say they want to be successful. Being that you know so many people who fit this description, and to be honest, listen, some of you listening to this might be one of these people. How many people do you think across the entire population of the world who also fit this description? How many people, maybe just in your industry, who fit this description? Probably millions of people. Can we agree that showing up every day to do the work plays a huge role in somebody's outcomes and ultimately in their success or lack thereof? Do we agree to that? Does anyone disagree to that? That showing up consistently to do the work plays a huge role in somebody's outcomes. Anybody disagree with that? So since you agree, here's a follow-up question. Why does nobody ever talk about the discipline yet? Why don't you hear anybody talk about it? Why hasn't anybody written a book about the discipline gap? Oh, as a matter of fact, somebody did. I called it The Third Day. I wrote a whole book about it. You can get it for free by going to thirddaybook.com. But that's I'm kind of cheating there because I didn't write the book as, hey, here's the difference between one person and another. It kind of is because the subtitle literally says the decision that separates the pros from the amateurs. So I kind of did talk about it that way, but the entire book is not framed around you versus other people. The entire book is framed around you versus you. It's about you helping yourself. It's a self-help book. Because one of the principles over here at Work on Your Game, we got a lot of principles. One of them is that leaders look in the mirror, not out the window. So the book ain't really about you comparing yourself to other people. It's about you comparing yourself to yourself, doing what you need to do. And if you do that consistently enough, eventually you will be so far ahead of all those other people that it won't even matter what they're doing. All right? That's what we do over here at the Work on Your Game world. Not to say we can't look around and compete, because competition is part of the game as well. Like, remember, I come from the sports world, so competition will never go away, and that will never be devalued here. But the most important competition is you being better than yourself. You keep doing that consistently, eventually the other people won't be competition because they ain't got the discipline to do what you're doing. Everybody follow? So why aren't there any Netflix specials about the discipline gap? Why is nobody pushing bills and laws through Congress about closing the discipline gap, but you got a bunch of people protesting about closing the wealth gap because they say, well, this group should be given some reparations, or they should write a check to every person of this group or this color in this place in order to make up for lost time or lost wealth or lost whatever. But nobody's saying, hey, what do we do to change? What do we do to close the gap about discipline? Just something for you to marinate as we move on. There's a simple answer to this, because in order to close the discipline gap, people would actually have to take some accountability and do things personally. So you close the wealth gap, theoretically, you actually wouldn't, but theoretically, you can close the wealth gap by just writing everybody a check or hand everybody a bunch of money. Now the wealth gap is closed. Now nobody can bring it up anymore. That technically is not going to close the wealth gap, because wealth is not just giving people some cash. But this is the way that, keeping it very simple, is the way that people are thinking. See, to close the discipline gap, you can't just hand somebody something. They actually have to do something. And because humans will always be human, the discipline gap will never get closed. And what did I tell you all? The opportunity is in the opposites. So knowing that the discipline gap will never be closed, because humans are always humans. Let me read between the lines for you. There will always be lazy people who will not show up and do the work, regardless of how much resources they have available, regardless of how much opportunity is placed in front of them, regardless of their talent. Therefore, your opportunity will always be in being one who is willing to show up and do the work, because there will always be so many people who won't. Everybody got it? Good. Let me tell you a quick story. I remember, I don't know if I had this in my notes for a later part of this series, but let me see if I have it in here. It might be in a later part of the series, because if it is, then I'll hold it until later. But if it's not, then maybe I'll just share it here. Let me see. I'm just looking to see if I got it. And it's not there, and it's not there, and I'm looking for one more. Okay, I don't think it's in here. So I know I have it in here somewhere, and maybe it's in a different episode that I'll be talking about it. But years ago, I used to go to this basketball gym every single day, not far from where I am even to this very day. And it was where I recorded most of my YouTube basketball videos. And the gym would often be empty. And the whole concept of the third day, speaking of such, came from the fact that a lot of ball players would often ask me, Dre, why are you always in an empty gym? How do you have that gym to yourself? Because it's not normal for a nice, pristine, beautiful gym like the one I used to train in would be empty, because usually there'd be a bunch of players in there practicing the same way that I was. But the gym was often empty. And the whole concept of the third day was me explaining to people that the gym's empty, not because people don't know about it, and not because I rented it out or that I own the gym and block people from coming in, but because people simply don't have the discipline to show up every day the way I do, which was true. And you have proof of it because you could see me in that gym every day empty. And one day every once in a while, there'd be some straggler who would come in. So there was this kid who came in there one time, and he was about my size, but he was younger than me. And he wanted to practice basketball. I asked him to play me in a game one on one because I was practicing by myself so often. I welcomed the idea of playing somebody one on one just to make sure the stuff I was practicing actually worked. Played him one on one, and I said to him, and he said to me, actually, how often do you come in here? And I usually would get that question after I worked out with somebody because they wanted to work out with me because they could see working out with me would help them get better. So he started asking. I could tell by the questions he was asking that he wanted to continue working out with me. And I found out a little bit about him. He's a young guy. He was from the neighborhood, and he didn't have anything going on at that time. He wasn't playing basketball anywhere. He wasn't in school. He was going to go to school, but he wasn't in school at the time. He was a young guy, maybe 19, 20, and he didn't even have a job. So basically, he had nothing going on in his life, which I'm not saying that as a knock against him. I'm saying that as that was actually good for me because that meant he had no excuse to not come to the gym if he wanted to work out. So I said to him, look, I come to the gym every day at this time, from this time to this time, I'm at this gym. If you want to work out with me, we can work out. But here's the thing. Here's the time that I start. Here's the time is over. You just told me you ain't got nothing else going on, so you have no excuses. Make sure you're here on time every day and you can work out with me. But if you don't show up, you can't work out with me anymore. And I told him that straight up from the beginning. This is the first day we just played one-on-one. I just met this kid. I said, if you don't show up, then I don't know you anymore. Make sure you show up. So he showed up for about, let me ask y'all, actually, before I even tell you the punchline here, how many days do you think this kid showed up to the gym? Those of you who are not familiar with my basketball work from back in the day on YouTube, I put videos out on YouTube every single day for about 10 years straight. This is just on basketball alone. I still put videos on YouTube to this day, but back then it was 10 years straight, just basketball workouts. And often there were times I was putting out 2, 3, 4 videos a day because I had so much content. So I went to the gym Monday through Friday every single day. It was like a 9 to 5. And I wasn't there from 9 to 5, but I went to the gym every single day, Monday through Friday. As long as the gym was open, as long as it wasn't a holiday, I was at the gym every single day. And I told him, keep coming to the gym, you can work out with me. How many days consecutively do you think he showed up before he broke the agreement that we had and he didn't show up? How many days do you think he lasted? That's the question. The answer is 3 days. This kid showed up for 3 days. We worked out 3 days in a row after that, and we would do our drills, and then we play some one-on-one, and I got all this stuff on video. You can find the videos on YouTube. I didn't put his name in it or anything. I don't even remember his name. But when you see me playing somebody one-on-one, he was a Latin kid about my height. He didn't have a shirt on, so he would work out with no shirt on. So if you can find those videos on YouTube, that's him. 3 days, and he stopped showing up. And I didn't see him or hear from him for about 2 weeks. I didn't hear from him. Nothing happened. And then about 2 weeks later, he came into the gym one day, and I completely ignored him. And he was on the court, and he kind of dribbled past the court I was on, I guess trying to get into my line of vision and get my attention. I completely ignored him. Act like I didn't even see him there. I act like he was a ghost. And I just kept working out. I didn't talk to him. And that day, I completely ignored him, left the gym, said nothing to him. And the next day, he didn't come back. And I haven't seen him since. That's the discipline yet. Now, this kid could have become, I don't know if he was serious. I don't know mentally what his makeup was as far as what he was going to do with basketball. But had he kept working out with me every day, he would have become a significantly better basketball player in about 90 days. But he blew the opportunity. I told him, just keep showing up. You're good. You don't show up, we got a problem. Unless you reach out to me, I gave him my number too. Said, look, if you ain't going to make it, let me know if you got a problem or something like that. But I'm expecting you here every day. You ain't got to call me. We ain't got to text. We ain't got to verify every day. Just, you know what time the gym opens. You know I'm going to be here. Just be here. He didn't show up. And that was it. That's an example, just an example of the discipline gap. Point number 2. Today we're talking about the gaps that no one talks about. And again, I'm going over several of them because it seems like a lot of people don't talk about these. Number 2, the effort gap. Effort gap and discipline gap are cousins, but let's talk specifically on this effort one. Showing up is one thing. See, it's one thing to just show up. There's another thing to actually give an effort to be successful. That's the next step. See, showing up means you're physically in the facility. Now, what do you do once you get there? How many people do you know have ability, talent, or desire to be successful? Maybe all 3, at least from what they say. Probably damn near everybody you know has some level of ability. They have some type of talent, and most people, at least if you listen to them talk, they want to be successful. Can we agree? Good. Probably damn near everybody you know fits that description. So conversely, how many people do you know of all those people? How many of them actually give an effort that is commensurate with their alleged desires? In other words, their effort lines up with their desires. They say they want to be successful, do you see their actions reflecting someone who wants to be successful? Now, that number may be a lot smaller versus the number who actually say it, the number who actually do it. You notice it not the same, right? Everybody sees where this is going. I kind of just told you. There are plenty of people out there who have ability, opportunity, and allegedly a desire to succeed, yet they don't do the damn work. Would you agree? And it was here that I would have told you that basketball story that I already told you. I told this kid, just be there every day and we're good. And when people would ask me again, how do you have this gym all to yourself all the time in Miami that you're working out? Excuse me. It's because of this effort gap. It's because of the discipline gap and the effort gap. Again, this gym is not some mysterious hidden location. This is a big gym with big windows. It is in a prominent location. It's very easy to find. You could Google basketball gym and this gym will come up on Google. It was a publicly owned facility. So we're not talking about some Equinox that costs $200 a month. This is a publicly owned facility. You know how much the membership was to this gym that I was going to? It was $10 a month. Yes, literally $10 a month. Meaning anyone could get into this place. And even if you didn't have a membership, you just wanted to use the gym that day, the buy-in fee to use the gym one time is like $3. One, two, three, $3. Anybody can get into this gym. And everybody knew about it. And I was the most known basketball person on YouTube for a good probably 8 years before most other people started to jump in. So everybody in Miami who had access to the internet, who played basketball, knew who I was. They knew where I was working out, and they knew exactly where that facility was at. I was a very easy person to find. Anybody could have came into that gym. Yet, 98% of the time I was in that gym working out, it was empty. Effort gap. Nothing I'm telling you is an exaggeration. Everybody in Miami know where that gym is to this day. Effort gap. That's the difference. And again, I told this kid, I didn't even like practicing with other people. One of the reasons why that gym was empty, and I never went and took the initiative to get somebody else to come to the gym with me, because I could have went and found somebody to come work out with me. I knew a lot of ball players in Miami. I could have easily told somebody, hey, come to the gym. This is where I work out every day. I could have easily told someone or invited someone or asked someone to come work out with me. I never did because I didn't really like working out with other people, honestly. I was never a big fan of bringing other people into my workouts. I liked working out by myself. But when he came around and he showed interest, I said, okay, I'll use this guy as a practice dummy. That's what I was going to do. I was using him as a practice dummy to basically use him to work on the stuff that I would do by myself. Now I could just use a human. He was like a crash test dummy that I would use to work on my game. And I figured that my audience also, because a lot of ball players who were watching me on YouTube, they would often say, well, Dre, I see you doing this stuff by yourself, but it'd be interesting to see you execute these same drills against a live human being, because I want to see what it looks like when there's some actual resistance going up against you. And I said, okay, that's a great idea. All of these things went through my mind when this kid came around to the gym. So I figured I would use him. I said, just show up every day. He couldn't show up every day. Sometimes it's just the simplest parameter will eliminate people. All you got to do is show up every day, and that's it. Again, he didn't last a week. These days, basketball's over. I don't play basketball anymore. I go to a boxing gym a few times a week. I was just at the gym today, and I'm recording this in early January. Anybody knows anything about the fitness world, especially if you're in the gym space, you go to gyms or you ever owned a gym or worked at a gym, you know that January is like the most popping off time of the year for a gym, because everybody has allegedly made some New Year's resolution to get in shape, so everybody's at the gym working out. For some reason, I don't know what's going on. There's something in the water down here or maybe in the world, period, but the gym's been pretty quiet. I'm recording this in January. The gym been pretty quiet. It don't look that much different from December, the gym that I go to. And I don't know if other gyms are different. Now, sometimes in my building, there's a gym in my building. And sometimes when I walk past that gym in the evenings, when I'm taking my son on the walk, I see a good number of people in there, but I don't know if it's that much different than the number of people who were in there in December. I don't go to the gym during peak hours when there's a bunch of people in there. I like going during off-peak hours. But again, even during off-peak hours, in December, it looks the same as it looks now. I would expect there to be more people and some new faces, but I actually see fewer faces. And again, the same thing happens in the gym. Any of you who goes to a gym, you go to the gym consistently, the same days, same times, you start to notice the same faces, right? Even people, you don't even know them. You don't even know their names, but you know their faces because you see them at the gym, same days, same times all the time, right? Same thing in this boxing gym. I notice the same faces. And they're consistent faces who I see, again, all the time. But these people are not as consistent as I am, and I'm not even trying to become a professional boxer. I mean, I was and was aiming to remain a professional basketball player in my basketball days. So it made sense, my consistency. I'm not trying to become a pro boxer, but I'm more consistent coming to the gym than some of these people who claim that they want to box. These are people who want to be pro boxers, boxers, and amateur boxing is not the same as amateur basketball. It's a whole different realm of the way things work in boxing as opposed to basketball. I have no intentions of getting into a ring for an official fight with anybody. Yet I still come to the gym more consistently than some of the people who claim that that's what they want to do. And I've talked to these people. They told me that they want to be pro boxers, or they want to get into amateur boxing, or they want to get into, like, in boxing they have this thing for like different age groups. And my trainer was telling me about it. He's been trying to encourage me to maybe get involved in it. I don't think that's going to happen. Never say never, but I don't think it's going to happen. But he's like, there's a group where like over 40 men can fight, and there's championships and all this stuff, and you can do local, and then there's regional, and then there's national. There's a whole like national competitions for this. Like, let's say a man who's over the age of 50 and he's 160 pounds. There's a championship belt for that in boxing. I have no desire to achieve any glory, sports glory at this point. I did what I needed to do in sports. I just like to stay in shape. I like to be in professional athlete shape, and boxing just happens to be my vehicle for doing that right now. I have no aspirations for doing anything in boxing. Again, I don't have anything to prove as an athlete at this point. The whole point being, I'm sharing all that to say this: there are people who do have something they want to prove as an athlete, and these mofos don't show up to the gym as consistently as I do. That's the point that I'm making here. This is the effort and the discipline gap that I'm talking about. So the ability to show up and actually give a damn effort is so lacking in society these days that this gap needs to be explored a lot more than it gets explored. Nobody talks about this. Everybody wants to talk about these gaps and outcomes. Nobody wants to talk about the gaps in inputs. Why does nobody talk about this? Well, we know there are reasons people don't talk about this, because it means holding people accountable for their own actions and lack of actions, which, again, your favorite politician or influencer is not going to gain a lot of fans by doing that. But again, my job ain't to gain a lot of fans just amongst average people, because I don't want no average people in my audience. Average people probably couldn't afford me anyway. I'm looking for people who want to do the work and they're serious about going to their highest level. So if that's you, keep listening. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, we are talking about the gaps that nobody talks about. Number 3, implementation gap. Implementation gap. Now, I talked about this recently in the episode where I talked about why you should take in less material, not more material, just a few days ago. The definition of implementation is the process of putting a decision or plan into effect, also known as execution. So you can also call this the execution gap. Just because you are consuming material, whether it's free material or paid material, or you're going to events, you're talking to other people, or anything else you do to get access to information, ideas for things that you could do, does not mean you will actually implement any of it or put any of it to good use. Just because you have access to something doesn't mean you're going to use it. That's the implementation gap. How many people do you know who buy books, attend events, sign up for webinars, sign up for free challenges, even join coaching programs, but don't implement any of the stuff that they get access to? How many people you know who fit that description? They got access, but they don't do shit with it. All right, there's a gym in the building that I live in. Now, if you live here, the gym comes with the fact that you pay whatever you pay to live here. There's still people out of shape living here because they don't use the gym. They don't implement the thing that they have direct access to. You know how many ball players I talked to over the years when I was playing basketball, who would tell me, Dre, man, if I just don't have access to a gym or a court, the closest court is 2 miles away, and my parents won't drive or they won't let me, et cetera, et cetera. So many people I would hear tell that story, and who knows if they were telling me the truth or not. Let's just take them at their word. But there were so many people I know who live here in Miami, where there are parks everywhere in Miami. Miami has more parks like per square footage than any city I've ever lived in, or Florida, period. Just all of South Florida. So I don't care if you're talking Boca Raton, Naples, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa Bay, Tampa the city, Clearwater, they're all part of Tampa Bay. I've lived and spent time in these places. There are parks everywhere in Florida. Like, you can't walk a mile in Florida and not come across a park where there's grass, there's a basketball court, there's parks everywhere out here. I don't know about where any of you live, but down here in Florida, there are parks every damn where. And there's still out of shape people in Miami and just Florida, period. Not just Miami, Florida, period. There's places to work out everywhere. All right, that's not the problem. The problem is implementation, folks, not access. A lot of people complain of lack of access, and some of you maybe actually are dealing with a real lack of access. But down here, ain't no lack of access. And most of you who are listening to this right now, you have access to you have a data connection, you got Wi-Fi. For the most part, 99% of you, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear that shit. You don't have an access issue. You got an implementation issue. You have an effort issue. You got a discipline issue. That's your real problem. Most people don't implement the material that they have access to. And I know for a fact that many people do not implement most of the stuff they get access to, whether they got it for free or even if they paid for it. I told you, I go to conferences. I ask people who I meet at conferences. When I go to conferences, I talk to damn near everybody. Anybody approach me at a conference, I'll talk to them. I'll stand in the lobby at conferences and just wait for somebody to approach me and just converse with people. I'll stand in the lobby all day. I'll stand in the lobby for hours talking to people when I go to conferences because I go there to meet people. That's the reason why I go. And I'll ask fellow attendees, all right, you came to this conference. What are you going to do now that you came to the conference? What are you going to do different based on what you learned or heard or got inspired by at this conference? 99% of the time when people answer that question, they tell me they're going to do something that they already knew they needed to do before they came to the conference that they still would have needed to do whether they had come to the conference or not. So a person, last conference I was at, I was speaking to this woman. I said, what are you going to do now that you came to this conference? She said, well, I got to finish writing my book. I said, how long have you been writing the book? How long have you been working on the book? She said, I've been working on it for like 2 years now. All right, so she didn't need to come to the conference to know she needed to finish writing that book. Now, maybe what she learned at the conference or what she heard got her energized and inspired to finish the book. Maybe that's what it did, and hopefully it did, and hopefully she finished the damn book. The whole point being, what would stop her from implementing before she came to the conference? Nothing. That's the whole point. People simply don't get things done. You come work with me, we're not taking 2 years to write a book. I don't care what you're writing about. Let's try 2 months. Right? We implement here. We get things done. If that sounds like you, then you need to be scrolling down to the underneath wherever you're listening to this and clicking on that link for workonyourgameuniversity.com, or just simply typing it into your browser, workonyourgameuniversity.com, and let's get it going. All right, so somebody would tell me something like, well, I need to finish this book. I started 3 years ago. This is at conferences when I'm talking to fellow attendees. Launching a website that they've been working on is rarely that they're going to go do something that they just heard 30 minutes ago. That's not usually the thing people say they're going to do. Do you know that most books that get bought don't get read past the first chapter? Most courses that get purchased do not get consumed past module 2. And a lot of courses are like 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 modules. This gap plays a big role in the outcome differences between people. Point number 4. I'm deciding if I'm going to put this into a separate episode. Let me see what I got here. Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to make this into actually, instead of a 2-part series, we'll make this into a 3-part series. So tomorrow we'll pick up on point number 4. So let me recap what we got here today. So we're talking the gaps that nobody ever talks about. And again, you hear people talk about things like the wealth gap and the income gap and the outcomes. People are talking about the outcomes. So let's talk about the inputs. That's what I'm talking about here. Number 1, the discipline gap. Showing up every single day to do the work. How many people do you know who want to be successful yet they don't show up? Exactly. Point number 2, the effort gap. How many people you know show up but they don't do shit? They don't actually put the effort in. They don't actually do the work. I go to a boxing gym. I'm not trying to be a boxer at all. And on any level, I meet people at the boxing gym who say they want to be boxers, and I'm in the gym more consistently than they are. All right, this is the effort gap. And number 3, the implementation gap. How many people do you know get access to information, access to stuff, buy books, sign up for webinars, sign up for free challenges, courses, etc., and then they don't even implement the stuff that they got the access to? How many people you know got a bookshelf full of books and they ain't even read the damn books? Now, this is the implementation gap. And all of these are within your human control. It has nothing to do with your ancestors, the past, what anybody else is doing, the government, anything like that. All of you have access to all 3 of these. You can do them whenever you want. This is a matter of you deciding that you're going to move yourself to these actions. If you have challenges with these, that's completely fine. It just makes you human. But it is not completely fine to not do anything about it. What you should do about it is go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, where you can have someone like me help you figure these things out, help you figure out what the actual barrier is. And so we can get over the barrier and you can actually get to living the life that you want to live, having the business that you want to have, and the outcomes that you would like to have as a result. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Tomorrow we'll go into part 2 of this, what I thought would be 2 parts. It's going to be a 3-part series. Work on your game. Dre, all